Okay, we are starting from Daf Yudalid Amud Sheni, about like 20 lines from the top. Tanya Kavose Derav. Okay, this is where we're up to. Tanya Kavose Derav. To explain our Mishnah, there were two ways to explain our Mishnah. Let's look at the picture of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that if you roof your sukkah with these planks, right? These planks. So Rabbi Yehuda says it's okay. Rameir says it's not okay. Now the question is, why would they not be okay? Rabbi Yehuda is correct. They're made out of wood, and they seem to be all right. They just seem to be a little wide. So the answer is, the way Rav learned is that they are kosher, according to Rabbi Yehuda, because it's made out of wood, certainly. But according to Rameir, the reason why it's usher, it's because there was a gezerah called Gzeras Tikra. They used to make roofs like this. Okay, they used to make houses like this, putting up a roof like that. I don't know, in Israel, sometimes they would tar it, but even before they put tar and cement on it, this was the roof. And therefore, if you put these planks because you're building a house, that would passel the sukkah. Again, if you pull these planks, even though you're building a house, that would make the sukkah no good, because you're putting the roof for a dira that you're going to live there all year. And that's no good. You have to make sukkah for a little temporary protection of shade. And therefore, that's why Reb Meir says, if we allowed people to put these planks up for regular schach, even though your intention was to use it for a sukkah, people will think that if I put it up for using as a house, it would also be okay. And in that case, it's not okay. So they made a gezerah. No one should be allowed to use these planks for schach. Okay, that's the way Reb Meir learned. But if it's smaller than 4 tfachim, then everybody would agree that it's okay. The only problem is these over here are wider than 4 tfachim, and that's why Reb Meir asers. And this was the viewpoint of Rav. So let's quickly learn the brisa that explains this way according to Rav. Tanya Kavase de Rav. The brisa says the opinion of Rav. If you made a sukkah with planks of erez is cedar that do not have 4 tfachim, divrei hakol, both Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda will agree kasher that it's kosher. But yesh behen arba'ah, but if they have a wide 4 tfachim, so Reb Meir paisel. Reb Meir says this sukkah is pasul because of a gzeras tikra. Again, we'll call that gzeras tikra because you may use roofs, so to speak. That's called Reb Meir. Rabbi Yehuda machshir. Rabbi Yehuda says it's kosher. Okay, because he says you can make it as wide as you want, according to the way Rav learns. It don't matter, because there is no gzera for the house. You know, a gzera that you'll use wood that was meant for a house. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda went to Reb Meir and said, Masa b'sas hasakana. There was a time that the goyim wanted to convert us. Okay, and it was very difficult to make a sukkah. They brought boards that had 4 tfachim, and we used it b'diavad v'sikhanu al gabe mirpesis, and we made schach on top of a porch. Now the goyim had no problem with that because they thought you're building an extension to your house. You get it? So therefore, the goyim said, okay, you could use it, but they didn't want you to build a sukkah. So v'yishavnu tachteim, and we sat, and in all the shuls they said it's kosher. So therefore, is a proof that if you use a board that's wider than 4 tfachim, it's kosher for schach. Amrulai. So Reb Meir answered Rabbi Yehuda, Misham Ra'aya, that's a proof. Ein sha'as haskana Ra'aya. Bring me a proof that during a time of danger, that's not a good proof. Because, of course, the Rabbanan will suspend all their gezeros in a time of sakana. So therefore, that's not a good proof. That a board on a regular year, on a regular time, is kosher. Okay, so that is the way Rav learned the machlekes. Let's go back to the Mishnah. But according to Shmuel had a different view on the machlekes. If it's wider than 4 tfachim, everyone would agree that it's pasul. That's what Shmuel learned. So what is the machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and Reb Meir? If it's smaller than 4, but more than 3. That's the machlekes. Reb Meir says, since it's smaller than 4 tfachim, then it's kosher. Because normal people, I guess what they sell in the Home Depot of that time, if you're building a house, is only planks that are wide 4 tefachim and above. So if it's less than 4 tefachim, it's certainly not going to be confused for house roofing. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says there's no gzeira anymore if it's less than 4 tefachim. He'll agree that there is a gzeira above 4 tefachim, but less than 4 tefachim, there is no gzeira. So that's what Rabbi Yehuda holds. But Rabbi Meir says, no, if it's still greater than 3, we'll still have the gzeira's tikra, the great gzeira of the roof, because Rameir says since 3 tefachim, it has a halachic distance in regards to Lavid. It's considered a size, not albeit in Home Depot, but in halacha, great Lavid is 3 and above. So as long as it's above 3, it's possible. That's what the machlokes. The machlokes is if it's 3 and between 3 and 4. So that is the way Shmuel explained the machlokes. Tanya Shmuel, we learned the brisa according to Shmuel. Sichicha ben asarim shel eretz sheyesh behen haba. According to Shmuel, if the way the brisa reads, if you roofed a sukkah with planks of cedar wood that are wide 4 tefachim, divrei hakol pesula, everybody would agree it's possible. It's too wide. It looks like a house. And therefore, even if your intention was to make it for a little sukkah, too bad. People are confused that if you build a home and you put the roof on, that's also a kosher sukkah. So therefore, everybody agrees. Above 4, it's possible. Ein behem abba, but it's less than 4, presumably, but it's above 3. There, Rav Meir paisel, Rabbi Yehuda maksha. Rav Meir would say it's possible. Rabbi Yehuda says kosher. Umayde Rav Meir would agree to Rabbi Yehuda. She'im yesh beineser leneser kimloy neser shemaniach pesel b'neim ukshera. If they're between one board and another board, you put pesel. Pesel means the waist. Pesel is another name for kosher schach. Remember that word. Pesel is kosher schach. If you put kosher schach in between, it's kosher. Look at the picture. The picture is this picture. If, according to Rameir, the way Rameir would learn, normally a board that's between 3 and 4, okay, is not kosher, right? 3 and 4, or it's not kosher. So it's not kosher schach over here. But there's a way to make a kosher schach, even though you have pasol schach over here. You have these planks of pasol schach. How? Because if you make 8 tefachim of schach in the middle of your sukkah, and your sukkah is at total 8 amas, that's an important point. The size of the sukkah is 8 amas. So in the middle of the sukkah, you have 8 tefachim of kosher schach. 8 tefachim of kosher schach. The inside is very kosher over here. But what's with these walls? What's with these non-kosher schach? So the answer is the non-kosher schach become a doifen akuma. A doifen akuma means that we look at this part as if it's part of the wall, and therefore it's as if the wall curves. And that's a halacha ma'aseh that as long as you don't have 4 amas, that's very important for a doifen akuma. As long as you don't have 4 amas from any of the walls, there it's kosher. It becomes part of the side wall. Now, what is 4 amas? Well, every amma is 6 tvachim. So 4 amas would be 24 tefachim. Here you have 20 tefachim. 4 boards, kosher, 4 kosher, kosher. So it doesn't matter. So you don't have to. You don't have to. Now, I will point out to you. Here's a good question. Why did he say that you have to put schach in between if it's all part of the wall? I'm not sure, but maybe because then it would be mitzdaref to more than 4, and that would possibly your sukkah. But anyway, you can, according to Rameir, this would be a kosher sukkah. Next, Umayde Rabbi Yehuda would agree. She'im noson aleho neser shu rochav abot tefachim. If you put a plank that's wider than 4 tefachim, even Rabbi Yehuda would agree that's possible. Kishera, that would be kosher. The ein yeshenim tachta, but you can't sleep under it because a board that's more than 4 tefachim and it's adjacent to the wall will become part of the wall. Agreed. So it's like a curved wall, but Rabbi Yehuda would agree that you can't sleep under it because that's part of the wall. If you sleep underneath, you're not fulfilling your obligation. You have to move more towards the center of the sukkah. And that exists. If somebody has a home and he has an extension to his house, a dinette extension, and if you open up the roof, you can make a sukkah. So you could only eat or sleep under the schach. Obviously, the wall, the roof that's not schach can connect you to the wall as doif and akuma, but you can't sleep or eat under there. Itmar, we learned in a brisa, a teaching. What happens? We said that if it's 4 tfachim, it's wide, then it's puzzle. Let's say it's 4 tfachim, it's puzzle. But hafchen al tzidehen, what happens if a person did this? He turned it this way. It's height 4 tfachim and it's wide 3. It's wide 3. So look, I would say that it's kosher because at the end of the day, it's not wide 4 tfachim in the sukkah. But these planks have a shame pasul schach. It's called pasul schach. So if you did it this way, is it kosher? So there's machlekes. Rav Huna ama psula. Rav Huna says it's pasul. Rav Chizda, Rabba Rav Huna amrei keshera. Rav Chizda and says it's keshera. They didn't give the reasons. But one says it's kosher, and one said it always remains pasul. So Ikli Rav Nachman or Surah. Rav Nachman was a guest in Surah. Surah was the place that Rav Chizda lived and Rav Huna lived. And Rav Nachman came for a visit and probably staying in a hotel. So Ul Gabe Rav Chizda Rabba Rav Huna, Rav Chizda and Rabba Bar Rav Huna went to visit Rav Nachman. And they asked him the question, Amrulei hafachan al tzideim mahu. What will be the din if we turn these planks on their sides? So they thought that Rav Nachman would agree to them, that it's kosher. Amalahus, Rav Nachman said it's psula, it's pasul, because nase kashapudim shel machner. These things, once they made it pasul, no matter which way you turn it, it becomes like slats of metal. You know, metal spit cannot be used as a schach because it's mekabel tuma. It's metal, right? So these things, it's automatically pasul no matter which side you turn it to. So Rav Nachman agreed to Rav Huna. So Rav Chizda came back. Amalahu Rav Huna. So Rav Huna told Rav Chizda and Rabba, didn't I tell you Rav Nachman would agree according to me? So they said to him, did you tell us your reason why it's pasul? That we didn't accept it. You just said a blanket statement that it's pasul. So we couldn't agree with your statement. Rav Nachman gave us the reason because it's nasa keshpudin shel mateches, but you didn't give us your reason. That's why we didn't agree with you. Amalhu. So Rav Huna said, "Mi bayis minei my time of elam lechu." Did you ask me a reason? Did you ask me what the reason is, and I didn't tell you? So you should have asked me what the reason is. Bottom line is that it seems that the halacha would be that if you turn it on the side, it would be non-kosher. Lema Messiah. Let us bring a proof that it's not kosher from a brisa. The brisa says about a sukkah. If you have a sukkah that cannot hold most of your body and your table, that's the size of 7 tfachim, so then it's not a kosher sukkah. Oi, what happens? Another a case of a not kosher sukkah. Which means that you got a hole in it. Like over here, you see in this picture over here, you have a little hole underneath this. It's more than 3 tvachim. The wall comes down more than 3 tvachim off the ground. Basically, that a goat can even easily walk into your sukkah from the breach. That's with a sukkah with a wall doesn't reach the floor. So the expression is that a goat can jump in with his head. So that's a pasul sukkah. The Brisa says, so you put a board, it's wide 4 tfachim, and even though it doesn't take up space of more than 3 tfachim, it's pasul. Now, how could something be wide 4 tfachim, but when you use it as chach, it only takes up space of 3 tfachim? The answer is because its thickness is 3 tvachim. It's wide 4 tvachim, but its thickness is 3 tvachim. So you turned it on the side, and we still see it's pasul. Hey chidami, what's the case? My love, don't you think that you turned it on the side, and therefore that's why it's not kosher. So we see a proof. Like Rabba Rav Huna says that if you turn these planks on their side, it's pasul. So the Gemara says, "Loy, you don't have to learn the brisa." Not so. Here you're talking about that you put it on its regular way. You put these planks of 4 tefachim the regular way, and yet it only occupies 3 tefachim in the sukkah. How's that possible? You put it at the edge of the sukkah. The ayel tlosa legav. It goes 3 into the sukkah, va'apachat levar, and 1 outside the sukkah. The havele pesal yotzim in the sukkah, v'chal pesal yotzim in the sukkah. Lidin kesukkah. You have to see the picture. The picture is that you have schach. He put the plank down, right? It takes up 3 tvachim in the sukkah, but yet, since it extends a tefach beyond the sukkah, it's considered as if the whole thing is in the sukkah, and therefore it's pasul. Therefore, it will pasul the sukkah in case this sukkah is only 7 tvachim. I'm trying to say. I mean, obviously, if it's a large sukkah, it wouldn't pasul it. But if this sukkah was only 7 tvachim, and the end of the sukkah, the last 3 tvachim, is made from this plank that takes up 3 tefachs in the sukkah and 1 tefach outside the sukkah, that would pasul. Because there's a concept called pesel hayotzim in the sukkah. We'll learn more about that later. But if you have kosher schach that extend beyond the sukkah, even if you don't have walls over here, you could still eat under the extension, even though the walls don't reach there, because that's all part of the sukkah. So in a kosher sukkah, you say that. In a pasul sukkah, you say the same thing, that the extension over the of the sukkah, even beyond the walls, have a din as part of the sukkah and could pasul the sukkah if it's a small size. Next Mishnah, Tikra she'ein oleha mazeva. We're going to learn this Mishnah according to the Rav. Okay, according to Rav, you put a plank that's wider than 4 tefachim. That's, let's say, 5 tefach wide. So then Rabbi Yehuda says it's kosher. There is no gezeras tikra. You're putting it to build a sukkah, and there's no gezerah of roof. And Rabbi Meir says no. If it's above 4, there was a gezerah not to use such wide planks. So the Mishnah says a guy built a sukkah tikra. He made a roof she'ein aleha maziva. He didn't put cement on it. He meant to make it for a sukkah, right? So Rabbi Yehuda says now. He's going to say like this: Beis Shammai Oimrim. Beis Shammai says it's no good because Beis Shammai is going to hold there was a gezeras tikra. So now, if you want to make it a kosher sukkah, you have to do mefakbek, just shake it. V'noitel achas mi beintayim. Take 1 in between. Now, shaking it, pushing it up and down doesn't really solve anything because at the end of the day, if Beis Shammai holds that if it's wider than 4 tefachim, it's pasul schach. What does mefakbek help you? The answer is, the Gemara is going to explain, what Beis Shammai meant to say is that even if you would shake it up and down, it wouldn't work. The main thing is, v'noitel achas mebeintayim. You have to take 1 board and fill it up with kosher schach. So do this, which is, let's get it to here. Here we go. This is called noitel achas mebeintayim. Leave the board there. It's pasul schach, but make this more schach kosher. You know, the more schach should be more than the boards, so to speak. So you have mostly kosher schach, and that's good. That would make it good. That would be Beis Shammai's opinion, because Beis Shammai would agree to the opinion that beyond 4 tefachim, these planks are not kosher. Beis Hillel says no. Even it doesn't matter. The mefakbek oy noitel achas beintayim. You can do either or, because we're talking about a person that did not put it down for schach. He put it down to make a house. But the fact that it's wider than 4, it's still kosher, right? It's still kosher because the way Rabbi Yehuda learns that even if it's wider than 4, Beis Hillel will hold that it's kosher. So mefakbek, in order to solve the problem of making the sukkah, all you got to do is just lift it up and put it back down. Oy noitel achas mi beintayim, or take 1 in between each board. That will kosher your sukkah. So again, you have this guy put down these planks. Maybe he was trying to build a house. So Beis Shammai says that since the planks are wide 4, you can't make a sukkah out of it. So in order to make a sukkah out of it, all you have to do is take 1 in between and put kosher schach. Beis Hillel says You could do either or. So since Beis Hillel holds that even if it's wider than 4, it's still kosher, you could mefakpek, just lift them up and put them down. Or if it's too heavy to do that, then you could just take out one plank and put kosher schach in between. Rav Meir seems to agree with Beis Shammai. Rav Meir is just saying that this is what you're supposed to do. Take one in between and don't shake it, because Rav Meir holds, even Beis Hillel, there's no machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Everybody holds that it's not kosher if it's wider than 4. So this is the way Rav would learn this Mishnah, and the way the Gemara agrees with learns that way up until the end of the Gemara, and it re-explains the Mishnah according to Shmuel. So let's examine it. Bishlama Beis Hillel makes perfect sense. The reason why you mefakpek or noitel achas mebeintayim, because it's wider than 4 and it's kosher, but it was never put down for a sukkah. It was put down to build a house. So there's a halacha that you have to make a sukkah. You cannot say that the sukkah was made for you. It's taseh. So tameu mishum taseh v'lo mino osui. The reason is it's really kosher schach, but you didn't put it down for a sukkah. You put it down to build a house. Therefore, they require you to taseh, to make it into a sukkah. And there's a drasha, not a made sukkah. You have to do an action to make a sukkah. So therefore, Beis Hillel gave you two pieces of advice, 2 strategies. You could just shake them. Ovid le maisa. That's considered as if you did an action. If you take one in between, that's also an action. So therefore, you could kosher your sukkah, even though you originally put down these wide boards to build a house. But according to Beis Shammai, what would be the reason that they say you have to do both? That's what you read the Mishnah. Beis Shammai says mefakpek and take one in between. That doesn't make sense. If Beis Shammai would agree that wider than 4 is kosher schach, and all you have to do is just make a sukkah from it, you could do one advice: either shake it or remove the other boards and put kosher schach in between. Beis Hillel's strategies are good. If Beis Shammai holds that there's a gzeras tikra, meaning that even if it's wider than 4, these boards are not kosher, so then why did Beis Shammai say you shake them? You have to take one from in between. That should be enough. So what does he mean that you have to do both, mefakpek and noitel achas b'mintayim? So the answer is we read Beis Shammai wrong. L'olam, really, Beis Shammai holds mishum gzeras tikra. Beis Shammai holds that there is a problem of tikra, of gezerah, of wide boards, and therefore you can never use this for kosher schach. The hachi ka'amri, and this is what Beis Shammai meant to say. Afal pi, even though shem mefakpek, even though you shook them, it doesn't help you, because at the end of the day, what are you shaking? A board that's wider than 4. A board that's wider than 4 is tfachim, is not kosher schach. If you take one in between and put kosher schach in between, that makes it kosher. If not, it's not kosher. So okay. So Ihachi says, the Gemara asks the question, Ema Seifa. Let's look at the end of the Mishnah. Rav Meir says the same thing. Noitel achas min beintayim. Take one in between. Avalo yefakpek, but don't shake them. Rav Meir hainu ke Beis Shammai. Rav Meir is saying that the halacha is like Beis Shammai. So the Gemara says, no, that's what Rav Meir meant to say. Hachi kama. This is what Rav Meir says. Lo nechlekul Beis Shammai Beis Hillel b'davar zeh. There's no argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel regarding this matter. In other words, even Beis Hillel would agree. You have wide boards. The only way to kasher the sukkah is taking one in between. So therefore, if you read the Mishnah this way, that the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda's interpretation of the machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel and Rav Meir's interpretation is whether you can kasher whether schach, a board, a plank that's wider than 4 tfachim is kosher. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's kosher, but that's what Beis Hillel says. According to Rav Meir, nobody holds it's kosher. There is no argument. Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel both agree. If it's wider than 4, there's a gezeres tikra. So, my kamashmala, what are you going to teach me? This Mishnah is teaching me that Rameir is like Gzeres Tikra, Rabbi Yehuda less like Gzeres Tikra. Rameir holds there is a problem of the roof, of a board wider than 4, you make a gezerah of roofs. And Rabbi Yehuda does not hold. But that was the machlokes of the previous Mishnah. That's now we had a Mishnah before. This was the Mishnah that we discussed. You're allowed to put wide boards on Fuschach, the Rabbi Yehuda, Rameir Oiser. So Rameir says this also. So why repeat this Mishnah? So the first attempt to answer that, this Mishnah is not a repeat. Actually, the previous Mishnah is a totally new idea. The Reisha of the Mishnah, the first Mishnah, is actually talking about using small 4 tfachim, less than 4 tfachim boards. What could be wrong with that? It's talking about boards that are smoothed out. They look like they are finished products, that they could be baseball bats, although they're not baseball bats. Take a look at the picture, how they make it. They don't have a good picture. Oh, here it is. Nesarim Meshupin, they make it like a smooth out, smooth out boards that technically they look like a tool. They're not makabel tuma because it really has no purpose, but it looks like a nice shape. And that was the machlokes. Rabbi Yehuda says this could be kosher schach because it's less than 4 tfachim. And what's the problem? Rabbi Meir says that even though it's less than 4 tefachim, I still have a problem because people will think that you're allowed to use regular baseball bats as schach, right, or regular kalim as schach. But if something is a useful item, which is makabel tuma, you can't use schach. So this looks like a useful item, and therefore it would be possible. That's what he says. It's talking about boards that are smoothed out. And that's the problem. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says there is no gezerah of kalim and it's kosher schach. Rabbi Meir says, no, if you allow this kind of schach, people will think that you're allowed to use regular kalim, regular baseball bats, and which are makabel tuma as schach. So the Gemara says that's not true. Well, Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, Rav, who's the author of this whole mahalach of the Gemara, Rav said, if you have a spear, the picture of the spear that we had before, that's unfinished, right? You didn't connect it to the top part, then you're allowed to use that as chach, even though it looks like a finished wood product, but it's not finished until you connect it to the pointy part, the metal part of the spear. So that would be kosher, benekavis, but the metal part always remains psula. But just using the wooden part, even though it's nice looking wood, we don't make a gzera of zecharim atif nekevis. We should not make a gzera of boards, smooth boards. You may use kalim. The same way we didn't make the spears. We said that one part of the spear you could use as schach, and the other part of the spear is just metal. You can't use as schach. And we don't make a gzera. Oh, if you allow one to be used, you're gonna use the other. Ela karchach. Therefore, you must say that there is no such a thing. The first reisha, ela korchach, kachacha, reisha pligi b'zeus tikra. The reisha of the Mishnah is talking about the boards, and it's wide for tfachim. And the question is, Rabbi Yehuda says there is no gzeus tikra, and Rabbi Meir says there is. The seifik pligi b'zeus tikra. They're arguing again, and then the second Mishnah, the same machlokes. Why do they have to argue the same point twice? Answers the Mishnah, Sefer Rabbi Yehuda, the Ka'amalei Rameir. The Sefer of the Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda telling Rameir, Amai ko'asart ben Nesarim. Why did you say Nesarim are no good? Mishum gzeres tikra. That only is Svara Beis Shammai. That's almost that you're going like Beis Shammai. Ubeis Hillel like Gazru. And Beis Hillel did not make this gzera. Rabbi Meir said, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel did not argue in this matter. So again, that's the way Rav would learn this Mishnah. Rav learned this Mishnah. It's talking about a wide 4 tefachim board. And the whole point of this Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda telling Rabbi Meir that Beis Hillel agrees with me that you could kasha this sukkah because the fact that it's wide 4 tefachim, it's not pasal schach. You just shake it or take one in between. And Beis Shammai still has a problem with it. And Rabbi Meir answered Rabbi Yehuda and said, no, everybody has a problem with it. There was no machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel regarding that matter. So that's how you read the Mishnah according to Rav. Now says the Gemara, and this concludes this Mishnah. Rav. This explains, you explained the Mishnah very well according to Rav, the Oma Machlokes B'Sheish Ben Abba, that the Machlokes is when they have four. Rav Meir is like Xeris Tikra, Rabbi Yehuda less like Xeris Tikra. So you explained the Mishnah very well according to Rav. Elo Shmuel, the Oma B'Shein Behem Abba Machlokes. Shmuel says their argument is when there is not four. Everybody agrees that if it's above four, everybody agrees, even Rabbi Yehuda would agree that it's possible. Seifa b'mai pligi. What could be the argument? Because a tikra is made of four. I mean, the guy made a house. He put down roofing house. That must have been that he's trying to make its wide 4 tefachim. So how could there be a machlokes? You could never use this. How could Beis Hillel say mefakbek or achas beintayim? How could this work according to Beis Hillel when everybody would agree that a board that's more than 4 tefachim, everybody according to Shmuel would agree that it's pasul schach. Answers the Gemara, bibituli tikra kami palgi. They're arguing whether to undo a roof. Mar sava batli bahachi or mar sava bahachi le batla. In other words, that the way Shmuel is going to explain the Mishnah is like this. Avada, for sure, if you use a board that's 4 tefachim wide to use a schach, it's no good. That's no good. If you ask somebody, he goes to the rabbi, they tell him don't use it. But what happens if it's already done? Okay, the guy was building a house and says, you know what? It's not going to be ready. I'm going to use it as my sukkah. So if you're trying to, on a b'diavad situation, turn that into a sukkah, then according to the way Rabbi Yehuda learns, that Ram Beis Hillel will learn that there is no, then b'diavad they gave you a pass. In other words, once you did it already, then you can turn it into a sukkah, and for this sukkah it's kosher. That's why you could do mefakbek, you could shake it, or take one in between. And Reb Meir would say no. It doesn't work that way. You can never kasher the sukkah. You can't kasher the sukkah. You can only take it away, because being mefakbek doesn't work enough. So that would be Mar Sava. Rabbi Yehuda says according to Beis Hillel batli bahachi, doing one or the other is okay. Mar Sava bahachi le batli. It wouldn't work. Next Mishnah, new Mishnah. Hamekores sukase bashapudim. You roof your sukkah with shapudim. Shapudim are, let's call that metal studs or long pieces of metal, right? Spears. Oy ba'aruchais hamita, or the long part of a bed. So let's see if they have a picture. So shapudim are these long metal rods. Aruchas hamita is just a part of a bed, the wood part, the long part of a bed, a plank of a bed. So it's pros of both of these things are makabel tuma, and therefore it's a pasula sukkah. How do you make it kosher? If you have more schach, if you have schach, the same amount that's in between, if the same amount of schach is in between the non-kosher schach, it's kosher. Im yesh revach beneim kamoisan, if there's exactly the same amount of pasul schach as kosher schach, then it's kosher. It's kosher. Okay, that's what the Tanakama. That's what the first man the Amma holds. That's what we're going to learn in the Mishnah. Then the Mishnah gives another idea. We saw this before. Hachoitet bagodish lasis loy sukkah einer sukkah. If a guy hays out an area, this is the picture that they have. He takes a hay. It takes all the hay out. The hay could be used as kosher schach. So he takes hay out, and to make a kosher sukkah over here. So then it's tasev v'loimen asur, because he didn't make the sukkah, a sukkah became of itself. So again, that would be possible. Now I'm pointing out, you must say that there's 7 tefachim wide. He made the hay, the outline in the hay, a 7 tefachim wide sukkah, and the height was 10 tefachim, because otherwise it's not kosher anyway. But he carved out in a pile of hay, lasis loy sukkah, to make a sukkah. Ain't a sukkah, it is not a sukkah. Now the Gemara says like this: Leme teheve to yufta to Rav Huna b'rei Rav Yeshua. Let us say that this Mishnah disagrees, is a refutation to Rav Huna b'rei Yeshua. The Itmar, we learned a teaching. Paritz ka'oy made by a reshus hayachid. If you have this, if you have a wall where to make a Rishus HaYachid, you have planks, right? A wall, and then there's a breach, and wall, breach, and they're exactly equal. There's a breach equal to the wall in between. So it's half walled and half breached. So if paretz ka'imid, if it's breached, is like the standing wall, Rapapa motar. Rapapa says it's a good wall. It's a kosher wall to make a Rishus HaYachid. Rabbi Huna b'Rei Yeshua, Ama Aser, it's not a kosher wall. Well, let's apply that. Our Mishnah said that to make a kosher sukkah, if you have pasal schach, Mishnah seems to say equal to the kosher schach, they're equal with pasal and the kosher. It's a kosher sukkah, keshera. And Rabbi Huna b'Rei Yeshua said by Hilchas Shabbos, it doesn't become a wall. So our Mishnah is a refutation to Rav Huna b'Rei Yeshua. Amalach Rav Huna b'Rei Yeshua. Rav Huna b'Rei Yeshua will say, "My kemoison." What does our Mishnah mean, kemoison? Which means, what does it mean that they're equal? Not that they're equal. Benichnas v'yotzei. The kosher schach is a little bit more than the non-kosher schach, such that you could easily pull the kosher schach in and out. So if the non-kosher schach was a little less than 4 tfachim, this would be 4 tfachim or more, 4 tfachim, something like that. So that's how you would read our Mishnah, benichnas v'yotzei. Okay, that's nichnas v'yotzei means you could actually pull the regular schach out. They're not exactly the same size. In other words, there's more kosher schach. So the Gemara asked the question, who says, we turn to Amud Sheni. How do you know that in the Mishnah? But actually, I'm saying maybe our Mishnah is talking about you made exactly non-kosher schach equal to the kosher schach. Who says that there is a difference, that the more kosher schach is not? Because the Gemara felt that the reason why you're saying that is because it's impossible to do it. So the Gemara says it is possible to make it exactly equal. So Rabami said, b'madif. You have to say our Mishnah is talking about you gave extra space for the kosher schach, a little bit more than the non-kosher schach. So even though it's possible to make it exactly equal, but you have to learn pshat in our Mishnah, according to Rav Huna b'Rei Yeshua, that there's really a little bit more kosher schach than non-kosher schach. Rava says, you don't have to say that the space is extra for the kosher schach, for the non-kosher schach. In actuality, you can say there's 3.9 tefachim for each. Okay, 3.9 tefach for non-kosher schach and 3.9 tefach for kosher schach. I'm saying 3.9 because, again, remember, if you have 4 tefachim, the sukkah becomes pasal. But if you have 3.9 tefachim of kosher schach and 3.9 tefachim of non-kosher schach, it could still be kosher. If it's put in the length, nice and erev, you put it in the width. Erev, if it's put in the width, nice and shasi. You got to see the picture over here, but it's basically, the non-kosher schach is the wood plank. Okay, let's say it's 3.9, and 3.9. I'll make it 3.9. The kosher schach is also 3.9, so they're equal. But according to Rav Huna b'Rei Yeshua, they cannot be equal. But they're not equal from above, because you see that they're actually the kosher schach has a little bit more width than the non-kosher schach. So it actually overlaps onto the non-kosher schach. So the kosher schach overlaps onto the non-kosher schach. So it turns out they are bigger than the non-kosher schach from above. So that's good enough to make it a kosher sukkah. Even Rav Huna b'Rei Yeshua would agree that although underneath it looks equal, from above the kosher schach is more, and therefore it's kosher. Okay, that's the Mishnah. One more piece of the Gemara. Oy baruchas hamita. Lema. We said that if you make the sukkah with aruchas hamita, the broken parts of a bed, it's kosher. Now this is the broken part of a bed. Let's just go over here and just turn it. This is how it looks. The broken part of a bed. Okay, if you make it with a broken part of a bed, it's kosher. So the Gemara asks a question. Maybe our Mishnah is a proof to Rabbi Ami bar Tavyumi. To Amar Rabbi Ami bar Tavyumi, if you make schach with the leftovers of kalim. In other words, you had, let's say, a towel, and then you cut a piece of that towel less than 3 tvachim. You made like little tiny pieces from the towel. Psula, that towel is puzzled to be used as chach. Why? Because the towel was a keli that's makabel tuma. So now that you make it even less than that, since it came from a keli, a keli or a beged that was once makabel tuma, even if you cut into small pieces, it's still possible to be used as chach. So maybe our Mishnah agrees with that, because this arichas hamita, this broken part of the bed, seems to be something that's not makabel tuma. That's the Gemara's problem. It's a piece of wood. Although when it was connected and you had a bed frame, yes, then it was a bed frame, and therefore it could be makabel tuma, and therefore you can't use it as a schach. But this is aruchas hamita, the one part of the bed. How could that be possible for schach? It must be because it came from an item that was makabel tuma. So the Gemara answers no. Either it's talking about the long part of the bed that has 2 feet, or the short part of the bed that has 2 feet. And so like this picture over here, that it has the long part or the short part of the bed, but remember it has 2 poles, 2 feet hanging in it. So the Gemara asks, what could you do with it? The Gemara is going to show that you can make it into a bed by leaning it up against the wall. So if you connect another piece of wood to these standing posts with the board, and you put ropes attached, you could actually make a bed hooked to a wall. So therefore, it's still makabel tuma as is, although it looks like a broken part of a bed. That's what we're going to say. Let's read it quickly. Hachinami barucha, it's the long part which take crying with the 2 legs, but sorrow the short part which take crying with the 2 legs. When did we learn this idea that Rab Chanan bar Rebbe taught us? It's not in our Mishnah, but on the Hada Tanan, we learned in a Mishnah. Mita, we go to the top of Tesvav and Aleph. Mita mitamas chavila umataras chavila. A bed that becomes tameh, it becomes tameh even in pieces. As it's whole, a whole bed becomes tameh, and the only way to be matar it is only if it's whole. So as it comes into different pieces, if it broke apart and you toivel it, it wouldn't help you, because when you put it back together, the tumah comes back. It has to be toivel totally. A bed needs to be toivel totally in the mikvah. So again, in those times, they had mikvahs that you can dump a whole bed in there. A bed can be broken up into pieces, and it could be makabel tuma, and therefore you could throw it into mikvah as you take it apart. So the Gemara asks, what use, if you take it apart, what use is a bed to be mitah? How could it be makabel tuma if you dismantle it and break it down into its pieces? If you have one long part with 2 legs or a short part with 2 legs, you still can make it into a useful bed. Lamai chazia, how could you make it into a useful bed? Like I told you, lemeschine aguda, to lean it up against the wall, and bring other pieces of wood and rope and put it together like this picture over here. You could actually turn this one little piece, this wood piece over here, this long wood, into a bed by adding a little wood over here, connecting it and leaning it up against the wall. Because you could do that, it's makabel tuma. And therefore, if it's makabel tuma, it's pasul as chach. So if you use this piece for your schach, it's pasul. And that's what our Mishnah was talking about, bedposts being used as schach. Okay, sorry to go a minute or 2 overtime, but we got up where you can at least continue on.
Very good.
Very hard Gemara, but you need the pictures. This first parak in Masechta Sukkah is not easy, but we made it, Baruch Hashem.
Very nice. Very, very nice.
Okay, very good. Have a good Shabbos Nachmu and
Motasach gelernt hand bei Nacht. Ich fühle sich so wie ein Talmud Chochem schon.
Very good. Yeah. Excellent.
Scheinem Dank.
Scheinem Dank. Gute Nacht, everybody.
Gute Nacht. Sei gesund.
Shabbos.
Sei gesund. Good Shabbos.